I woke with both wrists tied to a loom and a room full of nobles laughing at me. That was my first clue, that I was no longer in my apartment. My second clue was the loom itself. It was taller than I was, carved from black riverwood, with bronze heddles shaped like spider legs and hundreds of crimson threads stretched beneath my hands. Beyond it, masked courtiers crowded a wooden hall suspended between enormous forest trees. Their silk robes shimmered beneath hanging oil lamps. Rain whispered across the leaf roof. Somewhere below, market boats knocked against the city's river platforms. Then another woman's memories crashed into mine. My name was Nyala Ekon. I was 29 years old. I was a junior ceremonial weaver in the city of Oru, capital of the forest kingdom of Senga. And I was a transmigrator. The body belonged to a woman who had spent 12 years working for the Royal Weaving Guild, only to become the official scapegoat for a ruined festival garment. The cloth stretched across the loom was supposed to become the king's ceremonial sash for the masked river festival. Instead, its center had split into a crooked black wound. Gold thread curled around the tier like burned grass. Standing beside me was Master Odan, the king's favorite cloth master. He wore a polished wooden mask, shaped like a smiling spider. "Such carelessness," he said. "The royal pattern entrusted to an orphan, and this is the result." That earned another round of laughter. I looked down at the damaged cloth. I had spent 11 years in my original life as a textile engineer. I understood fiber fatigue, thread tension, dye migration, layered reinforcement, load distribution, and the exact sound fabric made before it failed. This cloth had not failed naturally. Someone had cut 14 supporting threads from behind the loom, loosened the lower beam by 3 turns, and painted the damaged area with a dye that made spirit silk brittle. Odan had arranged the sabotage carefully. Just not carefully enough. A royal official lifted a narrow bamboo tablet. "Nyala Ekon, the guild will hear your confession." I tested the cord around my wrists. It was ceremonial flax, meant to shame rather than restrain. The knot was decorative, not structural. Whoever tied it knew more about appearances than tension. That seemed to be a common problem in the room. "I did not damage the sash," I said. Odan tilted his mask. "The threads broke beneath your hands." "Yes." "You were alone at the loom." "For 7 minutes." "You expect the court to believe the cloth sabotaged itself." "No," I said. "I expect the court to believe you underestimated the wrong weaver." The laughter stopped. The memories inside my skull warned me that Nyala had never spoken to him like that. The old Nyala lowered her eyes, apologized before she knew the accusation, and accepted punishments because she feared losing her guild meals. I was not the old Nyala. Odan leaned close enough for me to smell clove oil on his mask. "The festival begins at sunrise in 7 days. The royal garment cannot be replaced in time. You will sign a confession, surrender your guild name, and repay 300 gold river shells." 300 shells. The woman whose body I wore had 7 copper shells hidden beneath her sleeping mat. Odan knew that. He also knew guild debt could be inherited by anyone sharing a household. Nyala had no family, but she supported 6 orphan apprentices in the South Loom house. If she could not pay, the guild could seize their labor contracts. That was the real pressure point. He did not only want a confession. He wanted silence. Something shifted beneath the ruined cloth. A narrow shuttle slid from the shadow under the loom and touched my bound fingers. It was black, edged in gold, and carved with 8 tiny eyes. The instant I touched it, faint lines appeared across the fabric. Not magical instructions, not a completed design. Stress paths. Every overloaded thread glowed red. Every weakened knot flickered yellow. The 14 severed supports burned like cuts across a map. The shuttle could reveal where the cloth would fail. But it offered no repair pattern. That part was up to me. I smiled. Odan mistook it for fear. "Untie her," he ordered. "Let her sign." The guard cut my cords. I rubbed my wrists, picked up the confession brush, and read the tablet. It said I had substituted inferior thread, damaged royal property, and acted alone. I placed the brush down. I will obey guild procedure. Odan relaxed. Then I added, bring the damaged cloth to the spider shrine for truth weaving. The entire hall went quiet. The masked river festival had one rule older than the throne itself. Every royal garment worn during the ceremony had to pass beneath the shrine's living web. Honest patterns remained whole. Stolen patterns unraveled and revealed the hand of their original maker. Odan's smile vanished beneath his mask. Only for a second. Then he laughed. Of course, he said. The cloth will be tested at sunrise with every other royal garment. Exactly 7 days away. He thought he had time to destroy the evidence. I thought 7 days was generous. The guild released me after sunset because Odan needed the accusation to look lawful. He stripped me of loom privileges, suspended my food allowance, and ordered me to report each morning for floor sweeping. He also assigned the ruined royal sash to his private workroom, where no junior weaver could touch it. Malicious compliance is a beautiful thing when the person giving orders believes humiliation is the same as control. I reported for sweeping. I swept every floor he named. I also paid close attention to what was lying on those floors. The Royal Weaving Guild occupied 9 connected palaces built around the trunks of ancient silkwood trees. Bridges linked dye courts, sleeping houses, weaving chambers, and storage halls. Beneath them, the River Miri curled through Oro in green channels crowded with canoe merchants. At night, masked dancers rehearsed on floating platforms. Drummers practiced until the river trembled. Shrine keepers hung silver threads between tree branches to guide forest spirits away from the city. Everything in Oro was woven. Bridges were woven from vine. Walls were woven from bark strips. Marriage contracts were knotted into cords. Stories were preserved as patterns. Even curses were woven. The local magic worked through rhythm, intention, and repeated structure. Most guild masters treated spirit spider silk as expensive decoration because it glowed beneath moonlight and accepted difficult dyes. They used it for borders, tassels, and noble vanity. Nobody seemed interested in its mechanical behavior. That was their mistake. The old Nyala's memories showed me where she slept, a narrow room beneath the South Loom house, shared with baskets of rejected yarn. 6 orphan apprentices slept upstairs, all between 10 and 15 years old. They waited for me beside an empty cooking pot. The oldest was Tano. He was 16, quiet and painfully thin, with indigo stains permanently worked into his fingers. The guild called him a dye boy because it had never granted him a formal apprenticeship, despite the fact that he could identify 40 plant dyes by scent alone. He looked at my wrists. They tied you. Yes. Did you confess? No. For the first time, his expression changed. It was not quite a smile. Tano seemed to ration those. He handed me a bowl containing half a roasted yam. The others already ate. The others had clearly not already eaten. I divided it into 7 pieces. While we ate, Tano told me Odan had ordered the ruined sash moved to the upper vault. 2 senior weavers had carried it. 3 guards had watched. Then he lowered his voice. Master Odan has been buying nitrate dye. How much? 17 jars this month. The old Nyala knew nitrate as a black dye used for mourning cloth. I knew from the smell on the royal sash that it also degraded protein-based fibers when mixed with sour river salt. Who prepares it? I do. That explained why Tano knew. Does Odan record the purchases? No, noble servants bring empty spice jars. They pay in silver. How many noble houses? Tano hesitated. 11. That was when I understood the scale of it. Odan was not merely stealing designs. He was selling cursed cloth to noble families. A curse in Senga was not a fireball or a dramatic bolt of darkness. It was usually a pattern that trapped force and returned it later. A sleeve might store anger from every argument and release it into the wearer's muscles. A veil might absorb jealous whispers until the bride wearing it became ill. A ceremonial cape might redirect a protective blessing away from its owner. Small effects. Plausible accidents. Excellent business for someone who sold both the curse and the cure. "Can you prove which houses bought from him?" I asked. Tano stared into his empty bowl. "I dyed the lining cloth. Every family requested a different scent to hide the nitroot. Cedar, pepper leaf, white resin, bitter orange." He could identify them all. That made him dangerous to Odan. It also made him my first ally. I showed him the blackened gold shuttle. He saw only an old tool. When I held it above a bundle of discarded thread, I saw faint colored lines marking weak spots. The shuttle responded only to me. I tested it for 2 hours. It did not move when I guessed. It did not correct my mistakes. It only slid toward threads under dangerous tension and stopped where structures were unstable. A diagnostic tool, not a miracle. Perfect. At midnight, Tano led me through a maintenance hatch beneath the weaving hall. We entered a forgotten storage chamber filled with broken reeds, cracked spindles, and cobwebbed baskets. In the back, behind 6 rolls of moldy funeral cloth, we found a sealed clay jar. Inside were 38 lengths of discarded spirit spider silk. Odin's guild considered them useless because each strand was too short for decorative borders. The longest measured barely 3 arm lengths. I held one between my fingers and pulled. It stretched farther than silk should have stretched. When I released it, it snapped back without damage. The shuttle's golden eyes glimmered. The strand was not only strong, it stored motion. I looked at Tano. "We are going to need a loom." He glanced toward the ceiling, where the guild guards patrolled. "You have been banned from every loom in Oro." Then we build one. That night, using 4 broken frame bars, 2 cooking hooks, a canoe rope, and a door beam, we constructed the ugliest loom in the kingdom. It was also the first one I trusted. My first experiment was a festival sash. Not the royal one. I was not stupid enough to start with an artifact guarded by 3 soldiers and an ambitious criminal. I used a torn apprentice sash that had been discarded after someone cut it on a nail. The body was ordinary river flax, soft but weak. I added 3 spirit silk strands through the center in a triangular reinforcement. Traditional Sengan weaving arranged magical thread according to symbolic beauty. Spider eyes, river waves, ancestral spirals. I arranged mine according to load. The first strand carried lengthwise force. The second crossed the tier at 37 degrees. The third crossed at the opposite angle. Together, they formed a hidden truss. The black and gold shuttle slid across the loom whenever the tension drifted. It showed me where stress accumulated, but I still had to calculate the correction. Twice, I pulled too tightly and the spirit silk snapped back hard enough to bruise my thumb. On the third attempt, the pattern held. The sash looked completely ordinary. Tano turned it over. "That is all. That is the point." At dawn, I tied it between 2 support posts and hung weights from the center. It held 20 pounds. Then 40. Then 70. The wooden post cracked before the sash did. Tano stared at it. I was enjoying myself now. We took the sash to the South Loom House breakfast hall, where 19 apprentices were eating millet porridge. I asked the senior instructor for a knife. She assumed I meant to trim a loose edge. Instead, I stretched the repaired section across a block and told her to cut it. The knife slid off. She tried again with both hands. The edge bit through the outer flax, but stopped against the hidden spirit silk triangle. The hall fell silent. One of the younger apprentices whispered, "She made cloth into armor." Not yet, but I appreciated the optimism. By noon, the story had crossed 4 bridges and reached the river markets. By evening, 3 hunters, 2 boat guards, and a shrine messenger had asked whether I could reinforce their clothing. Odan heard too. He summoned me while I was sweeping the cedar gallery. He stood beside 6 senior weavers, all wearing guild masks painted with gold thread. "You were forbidden from using guild looms," he said. "I did not use a guild loom." "You were forbidden from performing guild work." I repaired discarded cloth for no payment. His jaw tightened beneath the mask. "Spirit silk belongs to the guild." The silk was in a waste jar marked for burning. "You removed guild property." Tano signed the disposal ledger 12 days ago. Under Article 8, discarded fiber belongs to whoever carries it beyond the waste threshold. The old Nyala had memorized guild rules, because rules were the only protection poor weavers had. Odan had never expected her to use them. He leaned closer. "You are playing with patterns you do not understand." "I understand tension." "You understand mending." "Then you should have nothing to worry about." One of the senior weavers coughed into her hand to hide a laugh. Odan turned on her so quickly that she lowered her eyes. He ordered my improvised loom dismantled. I complied. I took it apart before sunset and placed every borrowed beam back where it belonged. Then Tano and I built a smaller loom beneath a river market canoe. The next milestone came from a hex. A noble servant named Bisav visited us after dark. She wore a green household robe and kept rubbing her wrists. Purple marks circled both arms, though nobody had struck her. Her mistress had purchased ceremonial gloves from Odan 3 months earlier. Every time the mistress became angry, Bisav's wrists burned. A transfer pattern. The gloves redirected physical tension toward the nearest servant wearing the household color. Odan had sold cruelty with plausible deniability. I could not inspect the gloves, but Tano had dyed their lining. He remembered the nitrate concentration, the resin scent, and the exact shade of green. So I made Bisav wrist wraps. I used 8 narrow layers. The first 2 absorbed incoming pattern force. The next 4 redirected it in a circular path. The last 2 released it harmlessly as movement. When the hex struck the next morning, Bisav's wraps tightened. Instead of pain, her hands jerked forward and slapped 2 water jars off a table. Not elegant, but nobody was injured. I adjusted the release direction. On the second test, the stored force traveled around her wrists and snapped a loose cord hanging beside her. On the third, it flowed into the ground. The black and gold shuttle revealed each stress point as it changed, but only after I understood what the pattern was trying to do. By the end of the day, Bisav could stand beside her mistress without absorbing the woman's rage. That night, Tano brought me a list of 11 noble houses. Beside each name, he had marked a scent. Cedar, pepperleaf, white resin, bitter orange, and 7 others. Odan had told the nobles the cloth would protect them during the masked river festival. In reality, every cursed garment would enter the spider shrine's truth-weaving test at sunrise. Stolen patterns would unravel. Curses would become visible. And the original makers, hand signatures would appear in the loose threads. I warned Odan the next morning. "Do not present stolen cloth to the shrine." He smiled through his spider mask. "My designs are flawless." I was not talking about the designs. His smile thinned. "You have 6 days left before your confession becomes permanent." "No," I said. "You have 6 days before the shrine checks your work." On the 5th day before the festival, Odan tried to buy me. He did not call it that, obviously. Men like Odan rarely describe their own actions accurately. He invited me to his private gallery, where finished garments hung from carved racks beneath glass lanterns. There were 27 pieces in the room: wedding wraps, hunter cloaks, noble veils, court sashes. The black and gold shuttle rested inside my sleeve. As I passed the garments, it twitched. 14 were under unnatural tension. 9 carried nitrate damage. 6 contained pattern structures that did not match Odin's hand. The stolen designs were everywhere. Odin poured palm wine into 2 silver cups. "You have talent," he said, "more than I credited you with." "That must be difficult." He ignored that. "The guild could restore your meals. The debt could disappear. I might even appoint you as a 3rd-rank repair specialist." 3rd rank was 5 levels below master and 2 levels above Nyala's current position. It would have sounded generous to someone who had not noticed the criminal evidence hanging behind him. "What would you require?" I asked. "Destroy the reinforced sash. Stop making hex wraps. Sign a statement saying your accusations arose from distress." "I have not made any public accusations." "Not yet." So he was afraid. Good. He placed a small purse on the table. It contained 50 gold river shells, enough to feed the South Loom house for a year. The old Nyala's hunger rose inside me, not metaphorical hunger. The body remembered days when she had chewed bark gum to stop her stomach cramping. Odin knew exactly what he was offering. I pushed the purse back. "You should withdraw every garment containing nitrate before the shrine test." He went still. I continued. "The dye weakens spirit silk, but that is not the dangerous part. It also holds emotional residue. When the shrine's web pulls on the pattern, the residue will become visible." His fingers tightened around his cup. "You are guessing." "No, I am warning you." "Why?" "Because when this happens, I want it understood that you had a choice." He threw the cup across the room. It struck a hanging veil and spilled wine down the silver embroidery. That was the end of the negotiation. Odin ordered guild guards to search the South Loom house. I had anticipated that. Our loom was already beneath Tano's canoe, wrapped in fishing nets. The spider silk was divided among 7 dye baskets. The notes were written as color recipes because Tano was the only person besides me who could interpret them. The guards found the knife-resistant sash. Odin cut it into 5 pieces. That was irritating, but useful. Each piece retained the reinforcement structure. Within 2 hours, 5 apprentices were wearing protective belts made from them. Destroying prototypes is surprisingly difficult when the prototype is modular. Odin also ordered Tano reassigned to the nitrate cellar. That was not useful. The cellar sat beneath the northern dye court, behind a door locked with a guild seal. Tano would be alone among toxic fumes for 12 hours each night. It was punishment disguised as labor. I confronted Odin on the main bridge. "You are endangering a child." "He is 16. He is untrained for concentrated nitrate. He claims to know dyes. He knows enough to understand what you are doing." Odin's eyes sharpened behind his mask. There it was. Confirmation. He had not punished Tano for helping me. He had isolated him because Tano knew the buyers. I stepped closer. "If he becomes ill, the responsibility will be yours." Odin laughed. "You are suspended. You possess no authority." "I do not need authority to document cause and effect." "You have no witnesses." The river market below us went quiet. At least 30 people had heard him. Odin looked over the railing and realized his mistake. I did not smile. That would have been unprofessional. Tano survived the first night by wrapping wet charcoal cloth around his nose. I met him when he emerged at dawn, eyes red and legs shaking. He handed me 2 things. The first was a strip of fabric cut from Odin's private nitrate stock. The second was a wooden delivery token bearing the crest of House Varro, one of the king's closest relatives. "We need stronger evidence," I said. Tano shook his head. "We need stronger cloth." He was right. My wrist wraps could redirect a minor hex, but Odin's royal garments held curses layered by master weavers. If he panicked, he might release them before the shrine test. We needed mobility. We needed protection, and I needed enough power to stand inside a field of hostile threads without becoming part of the pattern. A hunter named Kessie gave me the solution. She had heard about the knife-resistant sash and brought me a torn climbing cloak. Forest hunters in Senga traveled through the upper canopy, crossing branches 100 feet above the ground. Their cloaks used vine loops to catch limbs during falls. Kessie wanted stronger loops. I saw something better. Spirit spider silk stored motion. If I arranged it across the cloak in connected diamonds, every step could load the next one. Instead of resisting movement, the cloth could recycle it. I spent 18 hours calculating the layer angles. The first version threw me sideways into a basket of smoked fish. The second launched Kessie 9 feet forward when she tried to stand. The third worked. Kessie stepped onto a low branch. The cloak tightened across her shoulders, storing the downward force. When she pushed forward, the pattern released that energy through her back and legs. She crossed 6 branches in 11 seconds. Then she climbed the outer wall of the south loom house, using nothing but narrow wooden seams. The apprentices cheered so loudly that 2 guild guards came to investigate. Kessie dropped silently behind them. By sunset, she could move through the canopy like a spider crossing its own web. That was my third milestone. The sash resisted force. The wraps redirected curses. The cloak stored and recycled motion. 3 functions. 1 material. And somewhere inside those functions was a complete battle mantle. We had 4 days left. The city changed as the countdown tightened. With 3 days remaining, traders arrived from 8 river provinces. They filled the markets with carved masks, roasted plantains, smoked fish, bright beads, and jars of luminous moths. Musicians practiced beneath every bridge. Children tied story threads between doorposts and challenged strangers to guess the tailies woven into them. Above the celebrations, Odan prepared his collapse. He withdrew 3 garments from the festival test, claiming they needed repairs. The families who owned them protested, so he replaced them with other pieces from his gallery. Those replacements were also stolen. Greed had trapped him. He had sold so many fraudulent masterpieces that he could not remove them all without admitting something was wrong. Tano and I worked beneath the river market. Our canoe rocked whenever trading boats passed overhead. Water reflected green light across the underside of the platform. The air smelled of dye, wet wood, and fish smoke. For the battle mantle, I used 96 lengths of spirit silk. Most were too short to run across the full garment, so I joined them through layered knots. Traditional guild masters hated knots. They considered them ugly evidence that a weaver lacked continuous thread. From an engineering perspective, that was nonsense. A correctly placed knot could distribute load better than an uninterrupted weak section. I used 4 knot types. A locking knot at the shoulders, sliding loops around the elbows and knees, circular return knots at the wrists, a 12-point anchor pattern across the spine. The mantle had no single strongest thread. Every strand supported 3 others. Every geometric layer could shift when struck. The black and gold shuttle moved constantly now. Not by itself. It responded to my understanding. When I misread a stress path, it stopped. When I correctly predicted the force transfer, it crossed the loom like a tiny black fish, guiding the spirit silk through the structure I had chosen. The work strengthened me before I ever wore it. Each time I pulled the shuttle, the stored movement returned through my arms. My muscles learned to absorb the recoil. My breathing adjusted to the loom's rhythm. After 6 hours, I could feel thread tension without touching it. After 12, I could sense the pull of Tano's wrist wraps from 7 feet away. After 20, I noticed invisible curse threads stretching from the nitroot sample toward House Vero's district. The patterns were connected to their buyers. Odan had not sold individual curses. He had woven a network. Every noble garment fed stored fear, anger and pain back toward a central piece. the royal festival sash. That was why he sabotaged Nyala's work. He needed to replace her honest sash with his own version, wear it close to the king, and gather the power released during the shrine test. The truth-weaving ceremony would expose stolen patterns, but Odan planned to use the unraveling itself. He had turned the consequence engine into a harvest. Clever, also extremely dangerous. If the network overloaded, the shrine web would redirect every stored curse through the nearest compatible pattern. That could strike the royal court. I explained it to Tano using fishing nets. Odan tied 11 damaged nets to one central rope. When the shrine pulls, every net will tear at once. And the rope. The royal sash. Can we cut it? Not safely. The stored force would snap into whoever is closest. Tano looked at the half-finished mantle. Can you catch it? That was the real question. The mantle could absorb movement and redirect minor curses. It could not yet handle 11 noble garments unraveling together. I needed a release field. A web only I controlled. The answer came from the city bridges. Oru's bridges did not support their weight through one beam. Hundreds of small vine cords shared the load across the surrounding trees. No cord carried enough force to break. I extended the mantle's pattern outward. Instead of absorbing a curse into my body, it would cast temporary threads into the surrounding space. Each thread would hold a fraction of the force, creating a field of distributed tension. The field would move with me. Inside it, every hostile thread would become part of my structure. That sounded excellent in theory. The first test collapsed half the canoe roof. The second wrapped Tano in fishing nets. The third absorbed a thrown stone, redirected its motion into 8 surrounding cords, and dropped it harmlessly at my feet. I improved the geometry. Kessie tested movement inside the field. Her hunter's cloak accelerated her beautifully until she reached the boundary, where the tension spun her around and returned her to the center. She landed on both feet. That was unpleasant, she said. But useful. She considered it. Very. By midnight, I could create a thread field 9 feet across. By dawn, 14 feet. The mantle made me faster because it stored every step, stronger because impacts dispersed across the web, harder to touch because anything entering the field pulled against dozens of shifting lines. But it had limits. The field lasted only while I understood the forces inside it. Too many unpredictable movements could overwhelm me. Fire could weaken the silk. And if the central spine pattern broke, all stored force would return to my body at once. Not invincible. Just intelligently difficult to kill. That morning, Odan issued a final guild order. I was forbidden from entering the masked river festival. I read the order twice. Then I signed it. Tano looked horrified. I handed the tablet back to the guild messenger. The order banned Nyala Ekon from attending as a guild weaver. It said nothing about shrine witnesses. Every orphan whose design was presented during the festival had the legal right to stand before the truth web. By stealing their patterns, Odan had accidentally invited them all. We spent the final 2 days finding the original weavers. Tano knew which designs did not belong to Odan because he had dyed their threads. The old Nyala's memories knew the guild's apprentices. Kessie knew the forest paths leading to those who had fled Oro. We found 9. One was a 13-year-old girl named Sumi who had designed a rain pattern after watching water gather on banana leaves. Odan had taken it, added gold thread, and sold it to House Vero. One was a one-eyed basket maker named Wren, expelled from the guild after refusing to surrender a spiral knot that redirected bad dreams. 2 were brothers from the eastern marshes, whose fish-scale pattern appeared on the king's nephew's festival cape. The others had similar stories. Odan offered praise, then secrecy, then threats, then expulsion. He relied on the same structure every time because it had always worked. By sunset on the final day, 9 original weavers waited inside the South Loom house. We documented each design using practice cloth, personal hand signatures, and the dates Odan first accessed their looms. Sumi asked whether he would go to prison. "I do not know," I said. "What will happen to him?" "The truth will happen first. The court can decide the rest." That answer disappointed her. People like dramatic revenge until they have seen what uncontrolled vengeance does to innocent bystanders. I was not going to burn the guild, curse Odan's family, or collapse the royal economy. I wanted names restored, contracts canceled, victims protected, and Odan unable to do it again. At midnight, the festival masks began appearing on the streets. People wore faces of hornbills, crocodiles, antelopes, ancestors, and forest spirits. Lamps floated down the river in woven leaf cups. The city drums settled into one slow heartbeat. We dressed for the shrine. Tano wore plain, indigo cloth with reinforced wrist wraps. Kessie wore her motion-storing hunter's cloak and a mask shaped like a spotted cat. The 9 weavers wore white witness cords around their waists. I put on the mantle. It was black at first glance, but gold web patterns appeared when I moved. The threads crossed my shoulders, ribs, arms, and legs in living geometric layers. A hood rested behind my neck. The blackened gold shuttle fitted into a narrow slot above my left wrist. When I stepped forward, the mantle tightened. Stored force gathered through my legs and spine. I crossed the room faster than I intended and stopped 2 inches from the wall. Tano's mouth opened. "You moved before your robe did." "I need practice." "You have 5 hours." He was becoming sarcastic. I was proud. At the 4th hour before sunrise, a messenger arrived from Odan. He offered 1,000 gold river shells for the original design samples. Nobody accepted. At the 3rd hour, guild guards surrounded the South Loom house. Their captain carried an arrest order accusing me of stealing royal spirit silk. I showed him the disposal ledger. He read Article 8. Then he read it again. Behind him, Odan's legal clerk looked ill. The captain lowered the order. The silk was discarded. "Yes." "The guild seal confirms it." "Yes." He turned to the clerk. "I cannot arrest someone for taking property your master legally abandoned." The clerk whispered that Odan demanded obedience. The captain looked toward the festival drums. "The shrine demands truth." He left. At the 2nd hour, smoke rose from the northern dye court. Odan had set fire to the nitrate cellar. The flames were meant to destroy his records. They also trapped 3 workers inside. Kessie reached them first. Her cloak carried her across the upper branches, while the streets below filled with panicked festival crowds. I followed. The battle mantle turned every leap into the beginning of the next one. I crossed a 16-foot gap between bridges and barely felt the landing. At the cellar, burning beams blocked the door. I cast the thread field. Golden lines spread 14 feet around me, anchoring to walls, posts, and roof beams. The mantle showed me the load paths through tightening pressure. I pulled once. The field distributed my force across 24 lines. The beams shifted. I pulled again. It rolled aside. We brought the workers out without serious injury. The cellar records burned, but Tano recovered 7 sealed delivery jars from the river drain. Each carried a noble crest and residue of nitrate dye. Odan had tried to erase evidence. Instead, he created witnesses, a public fire and physical proof. By then, the eastern sky was turning silver. The Masked River Festival began at sunrise. We walked toward the spider shrine with the guild behind us, the city around us, and the consequences already moving faster than Odan could run. The spider shrine stood on a circular platform where 5 river channels met beneath the oldest tree in Oro. Its roots formed arches over the water. Between them hung a living web wider than a palace wall, spun by thousands of small black and gold spirit spiders. The royal court gathered beneath carved canopies. The king wore a white wooden mask with no expression. Beside him stood 23 nobles in festival garments. Guild masters occupied the eastern platform. Shrine keepers waited in silver robes. Master Odan stood at the center. He wore a magnificent red mantle, embroidered with golden spiders. Across his arms rested the replacement royal sash. It carried the central curse pattern. The black and gold shuttle trembled against my wrist. Odan saw me enter with Tano, Kessie, and the 9 witnesses. His mask concealed his expression. His posture did not. He had expected fear, hiding, or an arrest. He had not expected a procession. A guild official stepped forward. Nyala Ekon is suspended from festival participation. The eldest shrine keeper lifted one hand. She stands as a pattern witness. Her designs are not being presented. I looked at Odan. That remains to be seen. The court murmured. The test began. Each noble approached the web and laid one edge of their garment against the lowest silver strands. Honest cloth passed beneath without resistance. The first 4 garments remained whole. The 5th belonged to House Vero. It was the rain pattern robe stolen from Sumi. As the fabric touched the shrine web, every gold line shivered. Odan's red mantle pulsed. The robe began to unravel. Not violently. Truth did not need drama. One thread slipped free. Then another. The expensive outer pattern fell apart in silent loops, revealing the original structure beneath. A simple repeating design shaped like rain gathering on broad leaves. The loose threads twisted into Sumi's hand signature. She raised her witness cord. I made that pattern. The House Vero matriarch turned toward Odan. He lifted both hands. A misunderstanding. The child trained within my guild. Apprentice work belongs to the master. Sumi was never formally apprenticed. Tano produced the guild roster. Her name was absent. The shrine keeper recorded the theft. The 6th garment passed. The 7th unraveled. Ren's spiral knot emerged. The 8th held. The 9th revealed the Marsh brothers' fish scale design. By the 12th garment, 4 of Odan's masterpieces lay in thread piles. By the 18th, 7 stolen patterns had surfaced. The royal court was no longer murmuring. Nobles were pulling nervously at their sleeves. Odan remained calm, because the unraveling fed his central pattern. I could see it now. Thin black threads extended from every exposed garment toward his mantle and the royal sash. Anger, fear, and humiliation flowed into them. The black and gold shuttle marked the accumulating stress in brilliant red. He intended to release it soon. I stepped forward. The remaining garments must be removed. Odan turned toward the king. She is attempting to disrupt the sacred test after sabotaging the original sash. There it was. His final accusation. 2 attendants brought out the ruined cloth from the upper vault. Odan displayed the blackened tier. This is Nyala Ekon's true work. The king looked at me. What do you say? The cloth was sabotaged by cutting 14 support threads, loosening the lower beam by 3 turns, and applying nitrate dye mixed with sour river salt. Odan laughed. Specific claims without proof. I held up my wrist. The black and gold shuttle slid into my hand. When I passed it over the sash, the damaged stress lines glowed visibly for the first time. The shrine web recognized the tool. Golden light traced the 14 cut supports. The court saw that every thread had been severed from behind the loom at exactly the same angle. Then the nitrate stain rose from the cloth as black vapor. Tano placed the recovered delivery jars before the shrine keeper. Their residue matched. Odan's head turned toward him. That was the first moment he truly looked afraid. The king ordered the replacement sash tested. Odan refused. Not politely. He pulled it back and shouted that no suspended servant had the authority to question a royal cloth master. The shrine spiders stopped moving. In Senga, refusing a truth-weaving test after presenting a royal garment was considered a confession of concealed pattern work. Odan realized it one breath too late. The eldest keeper reached for the sash. Odan released the curse network. Black threads exploded from 11 noble garments. The court screamed. I stepped between the curse and the king. The battle mantle opened. Golden web lines spread 21 feet around me, anchoring to the shrine platform, tree roots, canopy posts, and the living silver web. The first curse struck my shoulder. The mantle absorbed it and distributed the force across 36 threads. The second wrapped around my wrist. My circular knots redirected it into the ground. The third carried enough rage to crack a wooden pillar. I caught it, turned, and released its motion upward. The canopy snapped open instead of collapsing onto the court. Then all 11 garments unraveled at once. Odan's central pattern poured toward me. Inside my thread field, I could feel every path. Every stolen fear. Every transferred injury. Every trapped nightmare. He had woven power by forcing others to carry pain. I had woven mine by making every strand carry its fair share. His curse struck. My mantle tightened. The field expanded to 30 feet. For one terrible second, the central spine pattern burned against my back. Then I understood the load. I moved. One step stored the curse's force. The next divided it. I crossed the platform so quickly Odan could not turn his head. His curse threads tried to follow, but inside my web they belonged to my geometry. I redirected them into the shrine. The living web did not attack him. It tested him. His red mantle unraveled. Dozens of stolen patterns spilled into the air, each forming the hand signature of an orphan, servant, or expelled weaver. 31 names appeared. Odan stood beneath them in his plain underrobe. No title. No masterpiece. No lie left intact. The platform remained silent for 9 full seconds. Then every noble who had purchased cloth from Odan began talking at once. House Vero demanded his arrest. 3 other houses insisted they had been deceived. One man tried to throw his cursed cape into the river, but the shrine keeper stopped him because it was now evidence. The king did not raise his voice. That made the judgment feel heavier. He ordered Odan's guild seal removed immediately. His accounts were frozen. His private gallery was placed under shrine guard. Every garment he had sold during the previous 8 years would be recalled and tested. Odan looked at me. You do not understand what you have done. I was still wearing the mantle. Golden threads moved around me with every breath. I understand it exactly. The guild will collapse. No, your business will collapse. The guild is full of people whose work you stole. He looked toward the senior weavers. Not one moved to defend him. The guild official who had tried to bar me from the festival removed his own spider mask. He had been wearing one of Odan's cursed collars. When it unraveled, a junior apprentice's signature appeared beneath the embroidery. That ended any remaining loyalty. Odan changed tactics. He always did when authority stopped working. First came outrage. Then bargaining. He offered to name me co-master of the Royal Weaving Guild. I declined. He offered 2,000 gold river shells. I declined. He offered the rights to his private loom palace, 6 river warehouses, and every remaining length of spirit silk. The property is frozen, I said. You cannot offer what no longer belongs to you. He lowered his voice. I can tell you which nobles requested the curses. That mattered. Some buyers might have known exactly what the garments did. I looked toward the shrine keepers. Tell them. His eyes narrowed. In exchange for what? A truthful record of your cooperation. And leniency. That is not mine to grant. He stared at me as though fairness were a personal insult. The court guards took him beneath the root arch. He was not dragged. He was not struck. He simply walked out without his mask, while 31 stolen hand signatures floated above the ruined threads of his masterpiece. That was enough. The consequences spread through Oru before noon. 9 noble contracts were suspended. 4 houses voluntarily surrendered garments for testing. 2 refused and had their river trading privileges frozen. The nitroot cellar workers testified that Odan had ordered the fire. The guard captain produced the unlawful arrest order. Tano identified 11 delivery cents and matched each one to a buyer. By sunset, the royal treasury had seized Odan's warehouses to fund compensation for harmed servants and stolen weavers. The guild council offered me Odan's position. I refused that too. They were shocked. Apparently, surviving one corrupt master made me the obvious candidate to inherit his paperwork. I will not lead the same structure with a different person at the top, I said. What do you require? The council asked. Written ownership for apprentice designs, payment records visible to the maker, independent testing for cursed cloth, no child assigned to toxic dye work, and waste silk available through an open claim ledger. The council called the demands radical. The shrine keepers called them reasonable. The king called them necessary. That settled the argument. Tano received a formal apprenticeship with 3 years of back pay calculated from his first documented dye assignment. He stared at the payment tablet for so long that I thought he could not read it. Then he asked whether the 3 years included festival bonuses. The treasury clerk checked. It did not. Tano quietly pointed to Guild Rule 19. The clerk added them. I nearly laughed. Kessie received a royal contract for 12 motion-storing hunter cloaks, but she refused exclusivity. She insisted forest hunters should be allowed to order them directly. Sumi's rain pattern became the official design for flood season capes. Her name appeared on every contract. Ren was invited back to the guild. He declined and opened his own workshop near the basket market. As for the nobles who unknowingly bought cursed garments, I helped remove the dangerous structures at cost. Those who had knowingly ordered harm paid full restitution before I touched a single thread. House Vero's matriarch tried to argue that her servants had suffered only minor effects. Bisa removed her wrist wraps and showed the purple scars beneath them. The matriarch paid. Odan's final punishment was decided 3 days later. He lost his royal title, guild rank, trading rights, and all pattern claims. He was sentenced to 12 years of supervised labor cataloging anonymous designs in the shrine archive. He would spend more than a decade restoring names to work he could never claim. I considered that appropriate. The Royal Weaving Guild became something different after the festival. Not immediately. Institutions do not transform because one villain loses his mask. They resist. They negotiate. They attempt to rename old habits and present them as reforms. So I built competition. Using compensation granted for the sabotaged royal sash, I rented 2 connected river platforms beside the South Market. Tano, Kessie, and the 9 original weavers joined me. We called it the Living Web House. Every design carried its maker's hand signature. Every payment was recorded publicly. Every apprentice retained ownership of original patterns. We accepted difficult work the Royal Guild considered beneath its dignity. Protective fairy ropes, hex-resistant servant uniforms, motion-storing climbing wraps, reinforced birth slings, canopy rescue nets, cloth that mattered when nobody important was watching. Within 6 months, we employed 47 weavers, dyers, knotters, and apprentices. Spirit spider silk stopped being treated as decoration. I developed 5 standard living layers. A triangle layer for resisting cuts. A circular layer for redirecting curse force. A diamond layer for storing motion. a branching layer for distributing impact, a shifting web layer for creating temporary thread fields. None worked without understanding tension. Copying the appearance produced nothing. Odan had built his career by stealing visible patterns. My work depended on invisible reasoning. That was a pleasing bit of symmetry. The blackened gold shuttle remained mine alone. Other people could hold it, but it became ordinary wood in their hands. For me, it still revealed stress paths. It never gave me answers. When I became careless, it stopped moving. When I assumed I understood a structure without testing it, it led me nowhere. That limitation kept me alive. The battle mantle changed too. Every challenge taught me another force pattern. I learned to catch thrown blades without breaking them, redirect falling debris, and cross 40 feet of open canopy using anchored silk lines. Inside my thread field, I could move faster than trained guards and strike with the stored force of every step. But I rarely needed to fight. A living web was more useful for holding a collapsing bridge than humiliating a swordsman. People began calling me the Web Guardian of Oru. I pretended the title did not embarrass me. Tano knew better. 1 year after the festival, the king asked me to stand beside the spider shrine during the truth-weaving ceremony. I wore the mantle. Tano wore a master dyer's indigo robe. Kessie lounged on a tree branch above the court despite repeated requests to sit properly. Sumi presented the royal rain cape she had designed herself. It passed through the living web without losing a single thread. The shrine spiders added one small golden strand to its edge. Approval. Sumi cried. So did 2 senior guild masters who later denied it. When the ceremony ended, I stood beneath the ancient tree and looked across Oru. Carved wooden palaces rose among green branches. River markets flashed with bright cloth. Masked dancers crossed floating stages. Story threads gleamed between rooftops. This world was still strange to me. Sometimes I remembered electric looms, laboratory tensile tests, and the clean numerical certainty of machines. Sometimes I missed coffee badly enough to become unreasonable. But I no longer felt as though I had stolen another woman's life. Nyala Ekon had been abandoned, blamed, and almost erased. I carried her memories, her hunger, her loyalty to those 6 children, and every pattern she had been too frightened to claim. I could not return what had been taken from her. I could make sure the people who came after her kept their names. As for Odan, he remained in the shrine archive. By the end of his first year, he had restored 83 stolen design records. He once sent me a letter asking whether I would testify that his cooperation proved he had changed. I sent back one sentence: complete the work without demanding ownership of the forgiveness. He did not write again. I never needed to destroy him. I only stopped carrying the weight of his lies, and once I did, the entire pattern collapsed onto the person who had woven it. I arrived in that world tied to a loom, but I learned that fate is only a thread until someone understands where the tension truly belongs.